Here we are, Austin Browne.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Your latest Instagram post prompted a lot of questions from me. You met Eric Trump, Nikki Haley. Did you meet Vivek?
Briefly, yeah, I did.
What was he like?
I mean, we caught him on an off night, I guess, because he was just suspending his presidential campaign, but still, resolved with what he wants to do. Still interacting with everybody. He talked with the media for a while.
Really?
Yeah, we were standing kind of near there when Fox was interviewing him and everything. But yeah, still pretty much the same. Yeah.
I'm gonna shut this door real quick. So, what was he like? Even though it was an off night, was he different than how he is on the camera?
Not really. No. I think that basically he was obviously dealing with some people who were a little upset that he was done running for president. But overall, I think pretty much the same talking points, saying that he wants to, keep going with the America First agenda, still friendly and charismatic like he usually is.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a really cool guy.
I agree. What do you think about him being the running mate for Trump?
I think he's a great pick, honestly. I think that there's a lot of other good options too, but I think that right now, we're in a place where we definitely need an America First candidate. We can't have any neocons, any establishment Republicans. With that said, I think there are other people that fit the bill of what I would be looking for if I was Trump. But I think that Vivek brings youth to the table. I think he was able to engage Gen Z voters a lot better than a lot of the other candidates were. Mm-hmm. A lot of polling had DeSantis up there pretty high with Gen Z too. But I think that Vivek really just connected with people in a way, engaged with social media as well, and gained people through that. And obviously his policies are really good. I think that his foreign policy and what he wants the country to be in the long term lines up pretty well with Donald Trump's vision of America.
Yeah, I remember in the debate, he cornered Nikki Haley, and he was mentioning the regions.
Yep.
And I don't even remember what country it was. Maybe it was Ukraine.
Ukraine, yeah.
And he named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 regions. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And you could see he was like, nobody else on the stage knows what I'm talking about. And he was right.
Yeah.
And so he continued to go at Nikki Haley, calling her a neocon and saying she's a World Economic Forum asset. What do you know about that? Because I tried to look into it, obviously, but I'm not as knowledgeable as you.
I think that what he's referring to there is Nikki Haley is very in line with what the Bush era was for the Republican Party. She is very pro-war, despite what she says about wanting peace and things like that. Politicians, they always want war to be going on, a lot of them. And I think that that's why she wants to be so involved with Ukraine. I don't think we have a good enough reason to be over there and to be putting so many resources, and certainly not sending any men over there. And I think the point that he was trying to illustrate there is that she is putting another country's problems before our own. We have a lot of problems we need to solve at home. And what she's done is basically continue to advocate for putting more and more resources into a foreign war that really is going to benefit us nothing in the long run. Yeah. As far as the World Economic Forum comment, I'm not super familiar with what her association is with that, to be honest, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Neither was I. I was just taken aback, though, because, of course it would be him to call her out. He doesn't have any, fear, which is interesting, I thought. I thought that he would get more attention and more votes from the Republican base in the primaries. So I was a little bit surprised he dropped out so soon compared to DeSantis, which that's another thing. DeSantis dropped out today.
Yeah.
What a collapse.
I know. I think it was the right call. I really do. I think Vivek knew when to call it, and I think his campaign was more about elevating his own personal brand.
And he did it.
Yeah, very well, I think. And I don't think that there was any other reason for him to run other than to get his name out there. He was a CEO, obviously successful, but as far as having political clout, I don't think he was really at that level.
No.
DeSantis, I think the reason that he chose to run, even though I wouldn't have advised him to run if I was one of his political consultants personally, but I think he was trying to run off of the momentum that he had during COVID. That was what brought him a lot of notoriety, and he really branded himself as the pro-freedom, pro-limited government candidate, even honestly compared to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Donald Trump, for as many good things as I would say about him, I don't necessarily agree with his handling of COVID. Now, granted, he was under a lot of political pressure at that time.
Yeah.
But DeSantis, to be fair, didn't cave to any of it and really was effective in that way. But I think we're at a point now where a lot of the people, even though they were running against each other, they're really all on the same side of most policy issues and how they want to approach it. I think that right now we have the most unified Republican Party that we've seen in a while.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, besides Chris Christie.
Yeah.
Is he even a Republican? I don't know. They just put him out there to be anti-Trump.
Yeah. He basically just ran his campaign as a personal vendetta, it seemed like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just really think that if you look at the way that politics has shaken out for the Republicans over the last year, even with the Speaker of the House, now that he's out, we have Mike Johnson. He's much more in line with somebody like Trump or, America First.
It's more conservative.
Yeah. And I think that, slowly but surely the Republicans are weeding out the old era of the GOP and the establishment and kind of creating a new party without necessarily splitting the party outright. Yeah.
What do you think happens after Trump? Because I personally think there's no way that he doesn't win. I really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, Biden's polling numbers last time I checked was 33%. And Jimmy Carter, who never won a re-election, his lowest was 38.
Wow.
They were saying. And so I really don't think.
No.
So what do you think happens after Trump? Say Trump wins, 2028 comes around. What happens?
It's hard to say. I think that for the Republicans, there's a lot of people that are going to run. We're going to see a crowded field for sure. But I will say this, whoever is the VP for Trump, I think is going to have a head up. Because I think for a fact they will run, whether that be Vivek. I don't think DeSantis will necessarily be the VP, but he may run again. Which that's going to be interesting to see how he'll stack up against a Trump VP and not necessarily Trump himself.
Yeah.
For the Democrats, though, I think that they're going to definitely run Gavin Newsom. I can't see.
That's a sexy pick for them.
I think it is. And I just really can't imagine a 2028 where they don't run him. A lot of people have floated Michelle Obama as another one that could be.
Dark horse.
Yeah. I mean, it could happen. I think that she has enough mainstream popularity. And even with some moderates, she may be able to be all right. Obviously, Republicans, I don't think she's going to pull many of them, but it would be a good pick.
Big Mike.
Yeah.
Big Mike. No, it's definitely interesting. What are your thoughts on New Hampshire kind of having the Democratic primary, like having Biden like saying write him in? I think it's him off the ballot, obviously. Him, Marianne Williamson, and then I forget the other guy, the lesser known guy. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that Biden, just because he's an incumbent, will probably win. I don't know much about the landscape of the voter base in New Hampshire, to be honest, but I think that just based on the fact that a lot of Democrats live under the mantra of vote blue no matter who, and I think that they think that he has the biggest name. So that's the safest bet for them to be able to beat Trump. I think they know that a Marianne Williamson or whoever else is never going to beat him in a general. And I don't think Biden will either. But given the options that they have on the table right now and that they've chosen to go with, I think that he will most likely win that. Yeah.
And then I think too, I forget how you pronounce his name, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks.
Yeah.
He's trying to run. I don't get it. I mean, he wasn't born here. And by the way, you're not young. He's like 50 almost. Yeah, bro. I was subscribed to them on YouTube. I like to hear a bunch of different opinions.
Yeah.
But they were trashing the Pope and trashing religion after the Pope said that porn it's not healthy for you. And they were like, oh, look at this creepy old man talking about, what's good and bad, talking about a porn. It just came off as really disrespectful. And it wasn't necessarily Cenk. It was one of the other, I think his name was Bob or whatever.
Okay.
But coming off as really disrespectful. And so, like I said, I like to have both sides of the aisle and then the middle, but I had to unsubscribe.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth it.
I think somebody like that, they're trying to capitalize off of their social media following. And honestly, I think that could be the next era of politics in America.
Trump started it.
He's a great example. And I think like a lot of these people that have gained so much notoriety in political circles have had their start on social media. And it's really the first time we've seen that. I mean, the most comparable thing you could say is maybe if there was a journalist or somebody in the past that was a TV broadcaster that gained their fame through that. But since social media is a relatively new thing for us, we're starting to see the next generation of people come up and be able to market themselves through that. I mean, me personally, I work in journalism and, you know, a lot of activism and things like that. And, you know, even people my age that have a large following online are able to market themselves and run for office now for like House seats and things. I saw there was a guy, CJ Pearson, I think he's running for, I don't know if it's State House, I'm pretty sure, down south somewhere. And he has a big following online from PragerU and things like that. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, Patrick Bet-David had Vivek on. This was probably in the summer.
Yeah.
And he talked about like the growth over a year prior, maybe 6 months prior to that point. And Vivek had like the biggest percentage increase of Twitter followers. And he's talking about numbers.
Yep.
And to give Vivek credit, him and RFK, they were doing all these podcasts. RFK was on Joe Rogan. RFK was on Patrick Bet-David, if I'm not incorrect. He was on Bill Maher. Vivek was on Patrick Bet-David too. And so you see these newer guys. I mean, RFK is not young, but he's not old either. But you see these guys embracing social media and getting their voice out there, and they're getting more views than the debates.
Yeah.
Like I know, like go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just gonna say I think that's a prime example of really meeting voters where they're at. Like, you know, how often do we actually sit down and turn on the TV nowadays? You know,
I mean, Gen Z doesn't.
That's what I'm saying, and it's just interesting to see that shift. But I think that what traditionally worked for people is no longer going to work, and there's going to have to be a pivot to be able to stay relevant and stay, you know, growing your brand in the political field.
Just like everything, there's always change. I mean, I saw the Obama ads. And boy, do we have change.
Yeah, that is true.
But yeah, man, I wanted to talk about something. You were talking about like we have the most united Republican Party that we've had in a long time. I feel like we don't have, in terms of America, we don't have a true conservative that's running for president. Because, you know, everybody has problems with Trump's presidency, but I think the one for me was the stimulus checks.
Yeah, true.
That's probably the least conservative thing that you could do.
Yeah.
And it was shocking that he actually did it. How do you feel about that? Do you agree with that statement?
No, I agree with you 100%. I think that there's two sides of this. I think economically speaking, it was a bad move to be printing that much money and putting that into circulation. That's going to lead to inflation, and it did.
Of course.
Not to blame Trump solely for the inflation. I think that contributed to it, and I think Biden's policies have exacerbated it.
Of course.
But what I will say is I have watched a lot of street interviews. I've done street interviews myself, you know, so I'm into that sort of a thing, and hearing the everyday man's opinion on these political issues. And what I will say is a lot of people are planning to vote for him for that. And I've noticed specifically that a lot of people that were in lower income areas were especially happy about that.
Sexy Red.
Yeah.
You saw that clip?
Yep.
She's like, yeah, Trump gave us money. He gave black people money. Yeah. We're going to vote for him.
There are a lot of minority groups that I have seen him gain a lot more support in. And I think that politically for him, it will be good.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that it's necessarily objectively the right thing to do? No. I think that in retrospect, Trump's handling of COVID was not great.
Yeah.
From elevating Fauci to such a high level was the first mistake. I think his economic policy of the way he handled it wasn't great. But again, I think that he does have a valid excuse in saying that there was a lot of political pressure on him. Because if he would have said, you know, no stimulus, no vaccines, no Fauci, basically, people would have been very critical of him and said he was denying science and, you know, leaving people out to dry.
It's just funny how, like, you see Biden and Kamala. No, we're not going to take the Trump vaccine. No way.
Yep.
They get into office and they're the ones pushing it. Okay, here we go. You just take it, really.
Taking it on camera.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Multiple times.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that if he gets elected again, it's overall net good. Don't get me wrong. Because, like, what we have right now, this is like bottom of the barrel.
Yep.
Really bad. How do you feel about the border?
Oh, it's a mess. That is one of the biggest things that I just. It's so shocking to see. Like, we have a lot of problems in our country. Don't get me wrong.
Of course.
But to see something get to that level in a country of our status is just unreal.
We're supposed to be top of the top.
Yeah, and I just don't understand like how Biden. There was something I read today that Texas had instituted a policy where they were going to put barbed wire on the fence, and Biden took it to the Supreme Court and won. So they're going to go start cutting down all the barbed wire, and I just don't understand why they are so against securing our border.
Well, you know why.
Yeah, and looking at it, as an outsider, not thinking about political ramifications, I would wonder why. But it all comes down to the demographic, the votes, what they're trying to make for the country, basically. And again, I am not anti-immigrant at all. I think that my family came here legally. I think that there should be a process in place for people to come here legally. However, it is not xenophobic or racist or anything of that nature to say that you should have national sovereignty.
Right.
That's what makes you a country. Otherwise, you're just a hotel where people are passing through and using you for your resources and leaving. But yeah,
there was a rumor that Biden made like a backdoor deal with the president of Mexico. I was listening to Ben Shapiro yesterday, and he was talking about that, saying that's why there's not as many people coming in from the border now. Granted, they're still coming in, but not as big as as frequent as a rate as it previously was. But I think it's funny. I heard on Joe Rogan, and I looked it up a little bit, did a little bit of research. But they were turning away the immigrants from Venezuela because those were the ones escaping communism and socialism.
Yep.
And it's just funny because they knew, those people are going to vote right.
It's the same thing that you see with Florida becoming so red. And the reason is, where's Florida? Right by Cuba. Those people, they don't want a replay of what happened in Cuba. They came here for a better life, and they wanted to stay that way. So that's the thing. Biden is very selective with what immigrants he wants to let in because he wants people that are going to be willing to fall in line with the narrative that he wants. And another thing that I will say about the border numbers, you said about those being down. The reason that is because they are flying people in instead of having them cross on land. Really? And yeah, I was at America Fest recently, which was in Phoenix. And at the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, there was a story that broke. I think it was Ashley St. Clair that posted it on Twitter. And then James O'Keefe followed it up with some reporting that basically they are flying in illegal immigrants on these airlines, and the government is paying for it. They're giving them papers, and they're letting them come in. So what's happening is that is artificially deflating the number of people because, border protection is not on a plane. They're not going to be able to, have ICE and, all these other agencies counting these people and reporting that as part of the figure. So I think that is what Biden is going to try to use as a way to show that his border policies are being effective, when in actuality it's not solving the problem at all. It's still there.
Yeah. I did see that report on X. I saw the video. It's so crazy that could happen. Like, that's possible that happened because we went to Punta Cana in the summer, and I remember we came back. We landed in Baltimore. There's a whole process when you come back. You have to show the ID. You have to go through customs. And the fact that they just ignored that, it's crazy to me.
I think that I had heard something that they altered the process of, like, what is normally permissible. As far as, like, what paperwork you need, what identification you need to be able to get on the plane. And I think there's also a rule. I don't know if this is necessarily a law or just a policy from the airline, but they don't share that information with the border protection agencies. Like, when those people come in, that information goes into the database and then it's deleted. It's not preserved. Yeah. So that's why it's so easy to cover this up, because unless you have somebody like Ashley St. Clair or O'Keefe covering it, right on the spot, nobody's going to know about it. There's no record.
Those are the real journalists.
That's true. Yeah.
I saw something from Jake Tapper. It was a quote. Journalism is the greatest job in the world. Something to the degree of that. And then he said, it's about being honest. and about finding hard truths. And it's like, oh,
that's rich.
You work for
coming
CNN.
from Jake Tapper.
Or MSNBC. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Journalism, I mean, I am a journalist now and I want to continue, working in journalism. It is a shell of what it used to be. Journalism used to be a noble profession that, sought the truth and at any expense. It didn't matter if somebody was offended by what you said. The truth was the truth and it didn't matter. Now what we're seeing is a lot of editors and a lot of writers being concerned more with the public narrative and the public perception rather than actually putting out what needs to be said. And this is why we have such a skewed perception of what's actually happening in the country, because you have basically propagandist outlets rather than actual news outlets. That's why so many things go unreported or underreported, because it doesn't fit the narrative that a specific station wants to push.
Yeah. We were talking about Claudine Gay before this, and how like all of these people were failing to like condemn her for failing to condemn the genocide of Jews.
Yeah.
And it's like, you literally saw the video and she was like being, for lack of a better term, just like an asshole. She was like laughing almost. It was like smiling. Like, what are you doing? Just because this is a woman of color, we have to respect her beliefs. And she stepped down. She didn't even get fired.
Yeah. And I think that the reason is, and this might be a hot take, but I think that academics are largely, how do I say this, egotistical in some ways when it comes to public policy. They are educated in whatever their field is. And don't get me wrong, many of them are very intelligent. But I think that what they are thinking themselves is that their intellect applies equally to political matters. And unfortunately, their ideas are just completely off the target. So, someone like that, they want to follow these policies that they have so carefully written up and, try to stick to a standard. But what your standard is that you're leaving out certain people to dry, basically. I had this problem here myself. Our group was being harassed online by somebody for our religious views. And I took it to YSU and I said that, we're being discriminated against for our religious beliefs. These people are being very blatant in their hatred. And it went up to a Title IX case. So when I spoke to the Title IX coordinator, she basically used the same exact talking point that Claudine Gay used and all of those other presidents, saying that if it wasn't specifically targeted or if it wasn't if it didn't exclude you from an opportunity, basically, then it didn't constitute harassment.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder what they would say about somebody that was LGBTQ+.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting because... there have been so many. Actually, here's an example of one. My group, this was Turning Point. We decided to paint the rock on campus and fight back against the, men and women sports issue, and also the transing of children. We painted the rock with this message, and we found ourselves on the front page of the Jambar. And they titled the article Pride and Prejudice and tried to say that basically, just because we expressed our opinion, that was prejudiced.
It is the most crybaby community online. You don't see these people making points in real life. You know what I mean?
No.
God forbid you misgender them or give them the wrong pronoun. And the whole world goes to hell. But then when Lil Nas X impersonates Jesus and dresses up as Jesus and takes little shots of wine and eats a bunch of hosts, we're not allowed to criticize that for whatever reason.
No. And
it's a crazy world.
There was a great example of that, actually. I'm a big UFC fan, and I was watching the press conference before the Strickland DDP fight recently. And there was a reporter that was pressing Sean Strickland, on his views on the LGBT community. And, regardless of what your opinion is on that, he's an individual. He can say what he wants. He has the freedom of speech. We're in America. Basically, this person was from Canada, go figure. And they were, pushing him on this issue, saying, basically, is he concerned about the way that the public could perceive his comments? And he just lit into him and just went on a rant. So I don't know if it was the same reporter or a different reporter, but basically he goes and then presses Dana White about it and asked him, and he used the language, I know you give them a pretty long leash. And he said, like, do you think that's a problem or whatever? And Dana cut him off and said, I don't give anybody a leash. And I think, like, the people on the left, and especially, like you said, like people that are concerned with the LGBT issues and stuff, they have become accustomed to everyone protecting them in the sense of, like, worrying about how they feel.
Bending the knee.
Right. And I think that we've gotten to a point now where those people expect this special treatment. And they expect everybody else to bend the knee and to limit their own freedoms just so that they feel welcome or okay.
It's gotten to the point where it's not even about sexuality anymore.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you don't see, like, I mean, maybe a little bit, but you don't see for the majority part, like, gays and lesbians online doing this.
No.
It's how do I even say it? It's transcended even, like, the trans issue. It's these people that are, like, they claim non-binary status. Mm-hmm. And, my pronouns are XAE. Mm-hmm. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm a furry. Like, what?
It's delusion. And
yeah.
it is delusion, for lack of a better word. And it just, when you have a slippery slope like that, that's what happens. Mm-hmm. When you have one thing, it started off with legalizing gay marriage, which, what I'll say about this is that I understand that it's better to keep the government out of things like marriage because that's a covenant, right? But, me and you are both religious. We understand that. But what I will say is we always define marriage as a man and a woman in this country. And that's how the Bible defines it. And that's what I believe it is. But we, that was the first part of it where we started. Then it started going downhill towards the trans issue. Then it went to the non-binary issue, and it's just going to keep going. It's going to keep devolving. And as that happens, more and more ridiculous ideas are going to present themselves. Mm-hmm. And because of the mentality, like I described, with everyone expected to kowtow basically to these people and pander to them, we are going to be expected to accept all of these ideas as legitimate instead of delusion.
It's an interesting point that you brought up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember hearing a stat that the majority of the United States was, like, against gay marriage before it became legalized in 2014, 2013, somewhere around that time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm religious too, obviously, but I try to think about it from, like, a third person perspective, somebody who doesn't necessarily practice religion or is a different religion, and believes that gay people should be able to get married. Mm-hmm. I think that, we live in America. There's a separation of church and state thing. It's a tough issue. Like, for example, we've done jobs for people that are homosexual, like husband and husband. And bro, they've been cool, like, not the obnoxious stuff. And I believe, like, a large part of, like, the personification of gay people being, like, overly feminine, like, kind of annoying is, for the most part, like, it's just a label that the world kind of put on them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the majority of gay people are like that, at least the ones that we've interacted with, clients of ours. So, like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like people should be free.
Yeah.
Live and let live to a degree, but not to the point, like, where now we're letting gender reassignment surgery for kids that are, like, 12 years old. There has to be a balance.
I agree. And what I will say is that I'll preface this by saying I think that you're absolutely right in the sense of, giving people freedom, live and let be. Even my conservative groups on campus, when I've been in charge of assigning people to be officers and things like that, we have had LGBT people in our conservative groups. Live and let live to a point. Right. Where I will say that my opinion differs in a sense is that, like, a lot of people use the separation of church and state, right? In actuality, yes, there is a separation of church and state to a degree, because it's really, the whole point of that was to ensure that America did not make an official religion of the state. There is never really anything in there that says that there is a separation of church and state specifically. It's more just like we don't have an official language in America. Right. So I think that was to protect people's ability to freely practice their religion. However, if you really look at it, and this has really become a topic of debate I've noticed in recent years, there is no doubt that our country was founded on Christian ideals.
One nation under God.
Right. And people can try to find, like, there's been letters that they found from some of the founding fathers saying that, it wasn't a Christian basis what they wrote. That may be a fringe case because, like you said, one nation under God. There are so many things in our founding documents that point to that. The morality that we drew inspiration from for the laws that we have in the Bill of Rights and everything all comes from a divine source, which was the Bible. So, to say that these people that are seeking to have gay marriage and things like that should be allowed to just on that basis, I don't necessarily agree with, because I think that if, as a country, if we are, not everybody has to be Christian, right? But if you are going to live under those ideals, it's kind of like if you go to a private school that's a college. You go there and you may not practice the religion that they are teaching, but you are still expected to follow the moral guidelines that they've put in place, which is from their religion. So I think that we should not have strayed away from the idea of making marriage between a man and a woman. I think that we should let people have their unions and things like that. But to call it marriage is where I disagree. And I think, honestly, you make a good point about how people used to be opposed to it. Barack Obama was opposed to it.
Biden was opposed to it.
Yeah, they're both on camera saying this. And Obama even had this in his book. He said that he opposed same-sex marriage on the basis of his religious beliefs, and then completely changed course. And the reason is political gain.
Yeah, I mean, it worked for him.
It did.
How do you feel about that movie, Leave the World Behind? I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I had heard about that. I can't remember exactly what it was about, but there was something that I had noticed in there that seemed a little weird. And then weren't the Obamas like the executive producers?
It was their production company, yeah.
Yeah, there was somebody online that said like maybe the Obamas are like trying to tell us something, but
you see all these billionaires building bunkers.
Yeah, that's really weird.
That's strange.
Yeah, that is very strange.
Strange.
That, and like you mentioned the WEF earlier, I mean, I just don't understand how people ignore these issues. Like when you see people like that, Klaus Schwab reminds me of like the
Emperor
villain.
Palpatine.
Yeah, he reminds me of like the villain in a movie that like his plans are laid out in the open and everybody ignores it because either they don't care or they think it's a joke.
German accent.
Yeah, I don't know.
Worst of the worst. Mm-hmm. You'll own nothing and be happy.
Yep.
That's been out there for years. Mm-hmm. Like 2-3 years.
Yep.
What about what's it called? They were talking about disease X. Have you followed that?
I have not.
They were talking about it in the event that there's another disease. Mm-hmm. We need to have a better plan for it.
Yeah.
And then there was a guy warning everybody too. There's a doctor on Twitter or X, saying that COVID didn't work for them. Mm-hmm. The goal was to get up. Have a social credit score system. But we still have cash. They still can't track all of our purchases, not everything. Yeah. And it's just it's scary that they're coming. They're eventually going to come for it, which is very scary.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is going to be their end goal. And everything that we're seeing right now, one common denominator that you can observe in a lot of the technological advancements now is uniformity. I think that if you look at electric cars, we were talking about that earlier. Like you said, if there was a natural disaster or if there was a war and it attacked the grid, then that is going to, put all of that in jeopardy. Likewise, for something like a disease that they're trying to maybe use, and I know that, that has become maybe the most censored point to make on social media, but I do really think that they definitely tried to capitalize on COVID. I'm not going to necessarily say that they created it. I think that that's likely, just because of Fauci came under fire for the gain of function research and a lot of the things with the Wuhan lab. But if the government were to weaponize something like that and use it for gain and as a power grab, electric cars are a great way to do that. Digital currency is another great way to do that. Those are all things that they can cut you off from.
Yeah.
And it would just leave you so beholden to the government, if something like that were to happen.
Tucker even talked about it. Tucker said this. He said that the grid is going to collapse. It's just a matter of when. It was him and Dennis Quaid.
Yeah. How's it going?
It was him and Dennis Quaid, the actor. Dennis Quaid said he's been working on a project for some time to bring like awareness to it. But it was really doom and gloom, man.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
We get a rolling blackout and boom, we're done.
Yeah.
And then that's another thing. How long does it take after a rolling blackout? Say we can't get the grid going back on in a couple days, right? It takes a long, long time.
Yeah.
How long does it take until it gets like Mad Max?
That's hard to say. I mean, even with some of the things that we've seen short term, I mean, look at the fallout that we've had from different natural disasters now.
Even the George Floyd riots.
Yeah. The thing is, it does not take very much for people to devolve into chaotic, just radicalism.
We literally saw it.
Yeah.
All over Twitter.
Yep.
Everybody, I remember there was a video of a bunch of people like breaking into a Target, and you see the flashing lights, the emergency lights, but everything else is off.
Yeah.
And just people all over taking whatever they could.
Yep.
Just running.
Yep.
Madness.
I think wasn't it Lord of the Flies that was the book that was all the kids were on the island, and as the book progressed, they just devolved more and more into like barbarism, and that's what we're going to see as a country with these disasters that keep playing out.
It's a very scary thing because I feel like eventually it will happen.
Yeah.
Why you see the billionaires building the bunkers.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to know like what's going to trigger it. Congress keeps pushing back. That's another thing. The national debt. We're at $34 trillion. And it doesn't feel like anybody's going to solve it. I feel like one day the dollar's going to collapse and they just won't be able to push it back anymore.
Yeah.
Why do you think nobody talks about the national debt? Like politicians.
I think that both sides of the aisle at this point, maybe there are Republicans that want to limit spending and they're true fiscal conservatives. Yeah. But I think that largely we've gotten to a point where that has become a non-political issue.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Because like that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
All the way over there in the background.
Yep. And I think it's because if you look at what are the big issues on both sides, so Democrats and some Republicans want money for foreign aid, or different social causes and social issues and whatnot. Whereas Republicans, they want border security, they want to bolster the military. All these things cost money, and that's why under Trump, obviously a lot of what he did was great, but again, we live in a world where nothing's free. There's no free lunch. So if we want stronger defense, we have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Stronger military. So I think that no politician really wants to talk about that because they know that it's never really going to be solved. Until
it goes to
bursts.
Shit.
Yeah.
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 That's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Especially for like people in cities.
Yeah.
Where they're all stacked on top of each other. Say there is a rolling blackout.
Yeah.
And you only have a couple days like before everything deteriorates. Maybe less than a couple days.
Yeah.
Your power goes out. There goes all the refrigerated food. You can't charge your iPhone. You can't see what's going on the news because there's no electricity.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do now? You gonna go back to your job where you make $15 an hour? Of course not. You're gonna take everything because you're gonna be starving to death. You're gonna go to the stores. A lot of people anyway are gonna go to the stores. Gonna take whatever food they can.
Yeah.
City of panic, the world of panic.
Yeah.
It's going to be crazy.
True. There was a video I watched. I just think those things are interesting with like the doomsday prepper type videos. And this one was not really telling you how to prep. This was saying like what would happen if there were to be a situation where you needed to prep, what you could expect. And, at the time, I kind of laughed when I was watching it, thought this is kind of ridiculous, dramatic, whatnot. But if you really think about it, a situation like that would devolve pretty quickly. And just seeing based on society's reaction of how quick they are, not even in a natural disaster situation. Look at COVID. Look at how quickly people were able to turn on each other and turn on their own rights and give it up and just, bow down to the government, basically.
But not all the way.
No.
The vaccine ID, they shot that down pretty quick in New York, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That didn't work, but that was about the only thing that didn't work.
Right. And I think that's why you were saying, like, the billionaires don't consider COVID to be 100% a success because they weren't able to go all the way. But what I will say is they used, at the very least, this could be a test run to be able to say, this is how far people have been willing to give up their rights, and this is how far we can push them and still have people that are willing to promote these ideas and get behind it,
I struggle to, like, fathom what their end goal is, because, like, it can't just be control, right? There's got to be something else. Like, there's only so much power that you can have over people,
Yeah.
These people already have all the money in the world.
That's something I've thought about too, but I just really think these people have a warped sense of morality or no morality at all. So it's really hard to be able to conceptualize what goes into that thought process.
Yeah, I definitely don't trust them.
No.
Nobody trusts. Few people trust these people.
Yeah.
Except, like, the boomers that watch CNN all day.
Yeah.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the housing crisis, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not just a housing crisis. It's a problem with our economy. So you see boomers all over. I did a little bit on Joy Behar 2 podcasts ago. Joy Behar was on The View. She always is. 81-year-old, out of touch boomer. Talking about Gen Z, just get a job. Quit complaining about the economy.
Yeah.
Just get a job. Because they were talking about Gen Z and a little bit of millennials too, still living with their parents because the economy, not able to find housing, all that stuff. And so Joy Behar is just like, get a job. Like, just go get a job. But the economy not being where it was in the 50s and the 60s, where you could buy a house in full for a couple $1,000s.
Right.
And inflation just escalating to the point that it has.
Yeah.
You see this trend with a lot of boomers that are celebrities and then on TikTok, social media as well. And you see, like, Gen Z, our generation, millennials, generation above us, really frustrated about it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just looked up Joy Behar's net worth right here. This was in Parade magazine.
Oh, boy.
And she has a net worth of $30 million and an annual pay from The View of $7 million. So
annually?
Yeah. So I think that people like that, it's a complex issue because I agree with part of it. I think that our generation is definitely work adverse, and they definitely have problems with work ethic and wanting to get ahead because we have made it so easy in America to just take, the government cheese rather than get out there and grind, basically. But I think that somebody like that, they have advocated for the policies that have destroyed our economy.
Yeah.
They have made a living, basically, that is not attainable to most people, like, being a talk show host, right, like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that, like you said, they're really in touch with any of the issues. Now, what I will say is I think that the housing crisis definitely is going to be a huge issue down the road, even more so. But I think that it definitely plays into what they want in the long term. Own nothing is what they want, and own nothing is, I think, what they're going to get because, if you can barely afford to rent an apartment and houses are costing like what, $300,000-$400,000 on average
for the small ones.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, that is insane. Like, imagine if you're living in California and you get out of school with your whatever degree that you have, and you're expected to go buy a house living off of $50,000-$60,000 starting salaries.
And a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom ranch is $1 million.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's just not reasonable, and I think that that's why so many people have lost hope in America, because the American dream was to come here and make a living for yourself and be able to afford that kind of a lifestyle. And it's just what used to be a normal middle class lifestyle has not become a reality for so many people. And I think it's because we have allowed politicians to run our economy into the ground. And there was even a guy I saw in Canada, and I mean, obviously Canada is not a good example.
Right.
He had immigrated from Italy, and this was in a street interview, and the guy asked him, you know, would you think that immigrants should come here? And he said no. And he said it was a good life that I was able to get at the time by immigrating to Canada. But he said now the housing prices have gone up so much. He said you're going to come here and not even be able to afford to live. And even though Canada is slightly more expensive than the United States, it's still very similar.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, average rent in New York City, I think, I don't know if it was like $4,000 or something.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's just not, it's not reasonable.
Thing is, though, I still feel like we're the best option. The United States is the best option. But like, because like, where else is there that you can go and come as like as an immigrant, make a new life for yourself, a better life for yourself?
That's true. I think that,
Which doesn't say much.
yeah, that's true. I think that we are still the best option in some respects. But I will say that I personally have not traveled abroad. But what I will say about what I've heard from people that have, or people that have lived abroad for an extended period, we have that perception here because we kind of look at everything through a rose-colored lens. Those people over there are very happy in Europe and in some other countries because of the lifestyle they've created for themselves through their society. We have such a hustle culture here, you know, make money, instead of, you know, have kids, raise a family, have a home, you know, focus on your religion, things like that. We have completely shifted our focus here. And I think that that's also part of the reason why you see prices going up. Why is it that we as human beings have such a tendency to basically live as a conglomerate in a big city? It's not natural to, like, there was somebody talking about like overpopulation. Technically, we could all live in like one state. I think they said like the whole world's population could fit in Texas or something. But we have so much room in this country to spread out, live. But we all live in the cities, and that's what's driving up prices because everybody, you know, it's supply and demand.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that there are countries, honestly, where they still live a little different lifestyle than us that would still be good. Now, granted, they might have different political problems and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I just really think that as we go further down the line, what people once knew the American dream to be is no longer going to be available.
It's a scary future.
It is.
At least we still have freedom of speech.
Sort of.
Well, yeah, still. You know, you have comedians in the UK getting arrested for jokes. I mean, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
So at least we're not there.
Yeah.
We still have, for the most part, freedom of speech.
Yeah. I know somebody in Canada. They work for a conservative news outlet, and one of their coworkers just got arrested. And it was all on camera. This was Rebel News. And they basically were walking in the street asking somebody, I don't know if it was a public figure or something, questions. And the security guard came up, or a cop came up, stood in front of him, and the guy walked into him accidentally, and they arrested him for assault. And it was all on camera. You could see exactly what happened. And, you know, it's just a really bad look for a country that claims to be pro-freedom to arrest journalists.
They already look bad.
They do. And
Canada looks awful.
Yeah. And
Worse than us.
Very true.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I think that even though we still do have freedom of speech, at least in theory and for the most part, I think that it's decaying. And that is something that, as a journalist, is very concerning to me. I think that, I mean, if we didn't have that, I would be out of work because I would not be able to write about the things that I do if we didn't have something like that.
A lot of people would be out of work.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, like, for instance, at school, you know, you might have objectionable opinions and people want to blackball you. Look at my group, how much we've had to deal with here. And we're a mild case. I have seen and write about cases in other schools that are much worse. You know, in the schools are a microcosm of the larger society, which is why we see things on social media of people being censored, people in their jobs being censored. There was just an incident that I wrote about. This was at Syracuse. And basically there was a gender therapist, I think, or a former gender therapist.
Oh.
That basically woke up and realized that what was going on was wrong with trying to trans kids and things.
Just one day.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what the whole thought conversion there was, but eventually she did change and become like a conservative speaker, I guess, on this issue. So somebody up there, hit me up and told me that I guess they had an incident where she was supposed to come to speak on campus, and they circulated a petition around saying that because of the opinions she expressed in her book and things, they should not be allowed to be spoken on campus. And
I hate that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, all those like more so right-wing talkers, or not talkers, speakers, in like the conservative space.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson's not even like a registered Republican or anything like that. I don't think he's ever came out as conservative per se. Just his opinions are more so on the right.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. I mean, in this case, it was funny because Jordan Peterson got involved with this. He tweeted about this because after she was basically, the group ended up getting funding from another source because their student assembly refused to fund it because they said that they didn't think that it fit the campus community to be able to speak about this issue. So they had to go get money from an outside source. Then this speaker, because of the negative attention that she got through the petition and through all of the backlash, lost her job. And because she worked for like an outside company.
Right.
It wasn't like, Ben Shapiro or somebody that works for a conservative company. She must have just had a regular job. Yeah. And she got fired. And he was tweeting about that. But yeah, it's a shame to see what used to be places for, that served as like a marketplace of ideas, right? The university. It has completely fallen from grace. And we see now that it's just become a political arena where the loudest voice wins.
Yeah, you see this when you read The Coddling of the American Mind. It's crazy. He talked about in that book how campuses weren't like half and half, but they were quite similar because of the reintroduction of veterans into just the overall workforce. And so the people that served in the military, fought in the wars, they had a right like leaning bias. Majority of them had that bias, and so they were working in the universities for a decent amount of time. And so over time that number went down. And so now you have what we have. Yeah. But it's interesting. I had no clue about that till I read the book.
Yeah. There was a study that I saw at one point, I can't remember where it was from, but they said that basically, I think it was like 78% of college professors are basically liberal or Democrat or whatever you want to say, left identifying.
Which isn't necessarily bad because, it's historically left-leaning education is. Yeah. But when you're not allowing somebody freedom of speech, which is also a historically like American left-leaning issue that they fight for. Right. It's kind of like, it's ironic.
That's the problem. It's not so much, I think it's what we've reclassified liberal to mean.
It changed.
Yes. And liberal used to, and I don't even mean when people say about the great party switch or whatever, when Republicans used to advocate for one thing and Democrats, and then it changed all of a sudden. I don't buy that. But what I do buy is like the idea that the word liberal means something different now.
It does. I was watching Gossip Girl with my girlfriend not too long ago, a couple months ago. And the one lady in the show, she's like a self-proclaimed liberal, and her family is like liberal in the show. And the liberal mom was skeptical about colleges. Yeah. And I was like, what? Yeah. What?
That's interesting. Yeah. Because nowadays, that's probably the place where they have the biggest foothold in society. It's not a surprise. Like, where are you going to try to pass propaganda off? It's where you have authority. It's where you have influence. So these people, I can't tell you how many times that I have had people come to me and say they are conservative, and they're concerned because if their professor finds out, then they're going to be basically have a target on their back.
Which is stupid. I remember hearing something here locally. This lady, or maybe identified as they, I'm not too sure. This lady was, I'm going to call her a lady. I don't give a shit. She was a physics professor.
Yeah.
And they were talking about Battle of the Sexes. I was a freshman or sophomore when I saw this. They're talking about having like Battle of the Sexes night on campus somewhere.
Yeah.
And this lady was like, well, what about the non-binary? Why are you not including? Shut the hell up.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Nobody gives a shit.
I mean, this lady looked the part too.
Yeah. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, because I was in the Senate with her, and I gave a speech about how they should not be including gender pronouns on our syllabi. And she was in the room when I gave the speech, and she was pissed afterwards.
Listen, you got the freedom to, but you can't make me do it.
Exactly.
I'm a he.
Yeah. I don't understand why that has become such a controversial take.
I think it's China.
Maybe.
I mean, it's working.
Yeah.
It's working very well. I think it's outside influences.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like there was a lot of people who said that, during the election, talking about Russian influence, on social media for elections. You don't think that this happens with social issues?
It definitely does.
Yeah.
It has to.
For sure.
To think that they're not toying with our social media algorithms, especially TikTok. TikTok is a Chinese company.
Yeah.
You're telling me they're not influencing all this stuff. You see, in China, they highlight like important athletic achievements.
Mm-hmm.
The top 3 things they want to be in China are like an astronaut, an engineer, a teacher.
Yep.
Here, top thing is a social media influencer.
Yep.
And why not get paid to do essentially nothing? Are you kidding me?
True.
Now, is that what I'm trying to become? I don't know. I just try to have fun. If that comes, it comes. But as long as people like enjoy the episode, that's all that matters.
Yeah. And honestly, though, I think some of the things that you talk about on this show is a lot more thought-provoking than most classrooms nowadays. There was a thing that I saw, and it was, about students in, I think it was a Chinese classroom. And this kid had like a puzzle, and he's like flipping through this puzzle, like going, doing it. And he was like 4. And then they showed a similar age group classroom in America. And the teacher was like rapping and filming a TikTok. And I was scrolling through the comments, and everybody's saying like, meanwhile the Chinese students are, doing physics, we're doing, whatever. It's just
with the pride flags in the classroom, having the parades, and I've seen it. It's on Twitter. It's all on Twitter.
Yeah.
They're celebrating. They're all the way waving the gay pride flags around. All these 4-year-olds.
Yep. There's a great account on, I think, Twitter and Instagram probably. It's called Libs of TikTok.
Yeah, of course, I know.
Yeah.
Everybody knows.
Yeah, and it's just like, I mean, seeing that, I think her name is Chaya Raychik, what she's been able to do with that account.
Yeah, she got outed.
Yeah, it's just groundbreaking. Turning Point signed her as a contributor now.
Really?
Yeah, and I mean, it's just really been eye-opening for people to be able to see, because this is an issue that I even see at YSU. When people accuse professors or teachers or institutions of indoctrinating people, they take great offense at that. And I didn't realize this until recently, because I was basically in the Senate, and there was a teacher that we had here who tried to pass a resolution of no confidence against our new president. And one of the things that she had said in this resolution was that he accused teachers of indoctrination. And she took great umbrage at that remark. But here's the thing. When you have somebody like Chaya Raychik and the Libs of TikTok exposing these things on film and with photo evidence, you can't dispute it. And that's why journalism is so important, and why we cannot let that field decay and devolve and let free speech collapse, because that type of proof is invaluable when you're really trying to make a point, like, that indoctrination exists, for instance.
Yeah, you talk about Bill Johnson.
Yeah.
It's an interesting story. I didn't follow it too much, but I saw a story, read it a little bit, saw a clip of him talking about just the controversy, basically. YSU obviously felt like, I mean, for the people that don't know, we're recording on YSU campus, which is Youngstown State University. It's not my podcasting campus, but it's a college we go to in Ohio, where I graduated from. But they hired a former congressman, Republican congressman, Bill Johnson, And there's a lot of outrage from people who are more left-leaning on campus because he is a Republican. And he wants to cut a lot of the programs, I guess, because they're not making money. Is that what?
I don't necessarily know if that falls into his purview, actually. I think that when he became the president, our old provost became a special assistant to the president. And I think that he had something to do with it. And I think our new provost, Dr. Pintar, I think is her name, she was the old assistant provost. She was the one that really started hammering away at the sunsetting the programs, because I was on the meeting where they talked about the music school getting cut, and there was chaos.
I mean, it's all the weird kids anyway. What are they going to do in society? You know what I mean? What are they going to do? They're going to change your gender a couple times. XAE.
It's just
they, them. What are we doing?
The thing that YSU needs to get right is that and I think this is probably not even just an issue here. I think this is probably at a lot of schools. I think that we put so much money into athletics and we mismanage our budget that it's going to not even be an academic institution anymore. I agree that there are programs that need cut, but I just don't understand how they can ratchet up our budget every year for athletics and then never see a problem with continuing to cut programs. You know, but I think that they definitely will, even if he didn't have anything to do with that, try to pin that on Bill Johnson. But what I will say about that whole situation is that is a prime example of the cancel culture that is on campuses.
It's just crazy that they don't like him because he's a Republican.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
I blatantly accused them of that. In the meetings that we had in the Senate, I wrote a statement from our Turning Point chapter saying that it was nothing more than political motivation. And they deny it. They say that it's because of the process. They say that it's because of his qualifications, but that's obviously not true.
Listen, you see a bunch of girls posting about this, protesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's just so funny that they attach themselves to all these social issues. But God forbid it snows a little bit outside. Mm-hmm. Somebody's got to shovel the driveway. Yep. And it's never going to be them. They would gladly give up their rights. Oh, and you 100%. See it.
Yep.
It's just, I don't know. I'm not even saying that I'm advocating for that. Yeah. I don't even know what I'm saying, to be honest. But it's just so funny how, like, this particular group of women in America,
feminists,
the overarching, like, hardcore feminists, like, not even feminists to a point that it makes sense. I would argue that the majority of people are feminist. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I think women should be able to vote. Yeah. I think they should be able to have bank accounts, drive, whatever. Just be a normal person.
Of course.
But when you get the women dressed in, like, the vagina hats, what are you doing?
We ran into some of those in D.C. this week when we were at the March for Life.
I will say about the March for Life.
Yeah.
I did not know that Jim Harbaugh was such a pro-life guy that he went to the march.
Yeah, he crossed right over in front of us when we were marching.
Respect the hell out of him for that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that that's a perfect example of what we need. Not a Michigan fan, but I think that, you know, what he's doing is really good, because the point that we're at in society, we have let the public narrative run away with the left. They have completely run away with it and controlled the media cycle and the news cycle. So I think what we need is people with influence to actually stand up for what they believe. And that's why I was making the remark earlier about, you know, the silent majority. And that was a big thing that was even discussed with our president. Our advisor wrote a piece in one of the local newspapers saying that the silent majority on campus supported him. And I was doing an interview earlier and they were asking me about that. I think that we need to stop being the silent majority, because
I agree with you.
Yeah, being a silent majority does nothing for you until you get to the ballot box.
Yeah. I mean, and even then, the left likes to intimidate the right. Yeah. I consider myself in the middle, man, on a lot of issues. I really do.
Yeah.
But, like, a lot of people who are conservative, or not even people that are conservative, but the people in the middle, they have to grow a pair, for lack of a better term.
I agree with you.
Because the people on the left, they're not afraid to share their opinions at all.
Yep. I think that until people, like you said, get a spine, grow a pair, whatever you want to say, and come forward and actually stand on their own beliefs, that we're just going to be a monolith in America. We're just going to have one set of what's acceptable to say, think, and do, instead of having, you know, diversity, which is what they claim to want.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Go change your gender. Go ahead. Like, I'm not scared of these people. What are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Tweet?
Yeah, basically. But yeah, I think somebody like Jim Harbaugh, that's a great example for, for people. And there's a lot of celebrities who have come out and really been good about, being vocal about their political opinions. Few actors, I think, came out and were, making some pretty conservative takes.
Even about being religious. Mark Wahlberg is a great example.
He really is.
Yeah.
And
Mel Gibson, too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Mel Gibson.
Yeah. They've both been pretty good. And I think you're going to start seeing that a lot more because everything, when there's a social issue, the snowball effect usually plays out. And I think that once one person says or does something and takes a stand, more people are going to feel encouraged and compelled to do the same.
It's human nature.
It is. And I mean, I've seen it just in group settings, leading conservative groups on campus in the last few years. There are so many people that came in and were at first like intimidated about sharing their beliefs. And now they're some of our most vocal members, and it just, I think it just takes one person or a few people to stand up for what they think, and more people will, gain the courage to do the same.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think we'll have a better country for that.
I agree on both sides.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that, it should just be one side that gets to, say what goes. Yeah. It has to be give and take.
We're all red-blooded Americans.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
I want to go back to when you went to the Iowa Caucus.
Yeah.
What was it like when you met Nikki Haley?
She's a nice lady. I don't have a problem with her. I have a problem with the way that she presents herself and her policies. I just saw an interview today where she was trying to play the race card, like talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Did you see that?
She's like a small person. I'm more South Asian than she is. I'm like 2% South Asian. I saw a picture with her and her husband today.
Yeah.
I was doing a podcast today, and they were in India.
Yeah.
And they were surrounded by all these men, barefoot, turbans. The one guy had a sword. I was like, what? And she was wearing like an Indian headdress, and she had the little dot on the middle of her forehead. I was like, you're really squeezing that orange, aren't you?
Yeah, that's what they do.
Just for political gain.
Elizabeth Warren did the same thing.
Kamala.
Yeah.
I mean, but Kamala is more so than Nikki Haley.
Oh, yeah.
Kamala, the visual difference is come on.
I think she was saying something in the interview about how hard it was being a brown girl in the political South.
That's such bullshit.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't know much about Nikki Haley at first. Like when she was serving in the Trump administration as the UN ambassador, I didn't know much about her. I never knew she was Indian.
I did my research. She changed her name.
Did she actually?
Yeah. I'll look that up. Let's see here. She changed her name. I know that. She goes by something different than sorry everybody, I banged the arm.
Oh, it says Trump was mocking it.
Yeah, what's her you're gonna get to it.
Oh wait, she did have a more Indian sounding name.
Nikki Haley changed her name.
Nimrata Nikki Randhala.
And now she just goes by Nick. I'm gonna close my laptop. And now she just goes by. Damn it. Sorry, everybody. Now she just goes by Nikki because it sounds more white. Yeah. You want to tell me that you're a brown girl? Yeah. Maybe in the technical side, but bullshit.
Yeah. Well, she's trying to play both sides of it.
I'm not a fan of Nikki Haley, bro. No. To be honest. And this is a hot take. Because I'm not conservative, middle. But I think Hillary's more likable.
That is hot. I think... Yeah, I could see how some people would think that. I think Nikki Haley. Here's the problem. Hillary is unapologetic in her how she presents herself. Her
strong
branding.
Woman.
Yeah, I mean she does do that, and I think that also she's like not afraid of calling herself a feminist. Mm-hmm. One thing I was reading in a lot of outlets is that Nikki Haley, in some ways, tries to stray away from playing the feminist card, even though she does. She tries to be a little more nuanced about it because she knows that won't play well with her base. And I think that it's because Hillary has people that like that, right? The people on the left want a feminist. They want a strong woman.
The vagina hat people.
Right, yeah. So I think that people on the right, myself included, I don't want to hear somebody preaching about feminism. I want to hear somebody talking about meaningful policy and actually like a vision for the country other than playing identity politics, you know.
She just comes off as bitchy to me. I'm sorry.
She does.
Yeah.
No, she does. It's weird because in person, like, I mean, granted, I met her very briefly, but
Right.
she seemed friendly enough. And obviously, you know, she's at a campaign event. People are going to try to put on that persona. But I think that, you know, overall, she was all right. I think the problem with her is really like her foreign policy is the biggest thing. That is disastrous.
We can't get into another war.
No. And she is a complete war hawk. She wants war in the Middle East and she wants it in Ukraine for sure. That's why I think Vivek was so successful pressing her on that issue because everybody knows it.
Oh, he beat the hell out of her on that issue.
Yeah,
no doubt.
definitely.
No doubt. Mopped the floor with her.
Yeah.
What do you feel like? What do you feel about Taiwan?
Here's what I think. If Donald Trump would somehow lose the election, or whoever the candidate's going to be, I think we all know it's him, and Biden wins, I think Taiwan gets invaded. I think that, and it might happen, there's a chance that they could invade before the election, before Trump gets in, if possible. But I don't think that will happen. I think what would be more likely is if Biden had another 4 years, they would 100% invade. For a fact.
I think the only good thing that Biden did was the CHIPS Act.
Which
he a plant in Arizona is gonna I forget when it's gonna be built by.
Yeah.
But he was talking about that and saying we can't rely on Taiwan for the chips. Something like to that degree. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
But to go back to what you said about Trump, if he gets back in, I agree with you. In fact, I've said on previous episodes, he's the only president that I think will allow us to prevent World War III.
I agree. I think that Biden's foreign policy has left us exposed.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
I was up till 4 a.m. last night.
Yeah.
YouTube rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
What will happen if we get into a nuclear winter?
Yeah. Those
because
are
the
interesting.
ash just covering the sun, up to 25 years of no sunlight due to a nuclear winter.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I think we're playing with fire here with some of these leaders. And I think that Trump had a way of maintaining good enough relations to avoid problems like that. And they knew better.
North Korea.
Yeah. Well, it's peace through strength.
Right.
I mean, that is the foreign policy that you want. You don't want to have to prove your strength because that's going to lead to war. You also don't want to be a doormat like Biden, which he has been. I was talking about this there was somebody interviewed me at the Iowa Caucus, one of the news networks, and they were asking about that. Do you think that this would have happened if Trump was in office? And I don't. I really don't think that these wars would be happening. I think that people know Biden barely knows where he's at half the time. He's weak, and they capitalize on that. That is just human nature. Since the dawn of empires, basically, when one leader was incapable, other leaders would take advantage of it.
I don't know why they're running him.
I think it's just they don't want to admit they're wrong. They really don't.
That's crazy.
Because if they did, when is the last time a political party has strayed away from an incumbent president and didn't run him again? I don't think ever that I know of.
I can't think of anything in the last 100 years.
Yeah. So I think that if they did that, for one, it would be unprecedented, and two, it would be a complete admission that their whole 4 years was a sham and that they lied to the voters.
That's terrible because I think Gavin would win and beat Trump. He would
It'd
have a
be
chance.
close.
He would have a chance.
It would be close.
Certainly better chance than Biden.
Definitely. Yeah.
Also, before we get on to other topics, what was it like meeting Eric Trump?
He was cool.
Really?
He was a really nice guy, yeah. He showed up to the Iowa Caucus where it was like the polling place or whatever. Me and some other people were volunteering there with an organization, and I was at the door kind of greeting people and helping them get in line and whatnot. And he came in. He ended up speaking because apparently, like at the Iowa Caucus, each candidate has a representative kind of speak on their behalf. So obviously he spoke on Trump's behalf, but really cordial guy, well-mannered. He was going around just handing out hats and talking to voters. But, it is interesting to see somebody that comes from an affluent background like that be so personable and be so, just kind of down to earth, not really putting on airs. He didn't come in a, $1 million suit, just came in wearing regular clothes. And I think that's what really makes Trump appealing to the larger demographic in America. I think one of the comedians said, it's the first time that a billionaire has been able to really connect with people, and people be able to connect with a billionaire. You know what I'm saying?
True.
So I think that's really the secret to his political success.
Yeah, bro. One of the reasons why you're here is you were talking about a National Day of Racial Healing, and there was a lecture for white people at, I believe this was the university is, I'm blanking on the university. Western Illinois.
Yeah.
And you wrote an article.
Yeah.
You said you weren't able to speak too much about it.
Yeah.
But just overall, give everybody on the camera a little bit of information about what happened.
Yeah, so I never really knew about this, but apparently there is a day every year. It's January 16th, and
Not the 6th.
yeah. But basically, this is like a national observance, I guess you could say, and a lot of colleges have joined in on it. And I don't know if it's like, there's specific organizations that advocate for it too, but basically it's the National Day of Racial Healing. And what it does, I guess, is they have different events that are meant to cater to the idea of racial healing, which, in theory, this is the thing that I will say with most political issues. Semantics plays a huge role. I think that especially if you look at issues like abortion, they very carefully nuance their words on both sides to cater to what they're trying to push. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is another example where racial healing at the surface sounds like, why wouldn't you want it? But the question that I had when I was writing this piece was, what are we healing from? We are in America. Everybody has equal opportunity now. We're not in the Jim Crow South. We're not in, the 1800s having slaves. So at this point, I think we should have healed. And it's just shocking to see that groups continue to cook up days like this that at the surface seem like it would be a positive thing. All it is a catalyst for racial division. Yeah. That's what this is. And I had reached out to the school actually when I wrote this, and I asked them, I said, what exactly are we healing from? And they asked me, well, don't you think we need racial healing? And I asked them, well, who is healing here? That's my question. Who are you saying is healing? Because how I look at it is this. I think it's a racist implication to say that there are certain groups of people that need healed.
Yeah.
It's like they have the same opportunities. You have black, white, Asian, Hispanic people at your school. They're all there having the same opportunities given to them. So what do they have? What are they experiencing that they need to heal from more than anybody else? We all have problems as, just Americans, but I don't think that there's anything like, sure, there's going to be instances of racism, but they are using these things to try to cement the idea that there is an institutionalized racism in America is what I think.
The institutions are on their side.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny. You see all these rock bands now, from they're like in their 70s. And all these guys in the beginning in like the 60s and the 70s they were against, fight the power, right? Yep. They were against all the corporate stuff. But now all these people, like the corporations, they're supporting these people that are saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna fight the power." And like the corporations, they got the pride flag every June in their logo.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You see a Mercedes-Benz. I saw a Mercedes-Benz ad on Twitter. This was 2 years ago during Pride Month. 2 lesbian couples, which is fine, whatever. Do you believe that they were walking right in front of the car? You couldn't even see the logo of the Benz.
Really?
Yep.
Well, that's because that's what these companies want their branding to be. That's what literally.
China.
Yeah. I mean, scroll through Twitter on June, I think is Pride Month.
My favorite month.
Yeah. Everything turns to a rainbow.
Uh-huh.
All the logos suddenly, and that literally becomes their branding.
Yeah, if you think about it, they're taking advantage. They're exploiting the gay pride movement.
Yep.
Because July 31st, it changes back.
Oh, 100%. And it's the same reason why, I'm trying to think of different like issues where people have done that. I think they did that during the Ukraine war. When that started, then everybody switched back. I think during the BLM movement, I guess you could say, a lot of people posted on social media. And then it's funny, if you go back on their page now, is their black square still there?
I'm not gonna lie, I posted it.
Did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I deleted it about after 2 days. I was like, "What? This didn't do anything. What did it do?"
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you. If you go back, you could probably find things where I was at first outraged about the whole situation, and I was, kind of understanding where everybody was coming from. But as the facts started, now this was when I was still, I don't know if I would have still been in high school at that point. I might have been, or just got out. But as the facts came out, I understood that the media was using this as a agenda item.
Listen, I don't think what happened was good.
No.
But I don't think we should be celebrating a guy that put a loaded gun to a pregnant woman's stomach.
Mm-hmm.
National You-Know-Who Day.
Yep.
What?
Here's the thing. If you want to know who's right on an issue, look at who they're promoting. Who is the left promoting? Okay, you have George Floyd, where he's now viewed as a saint basically by people on the left.
Well, he was.
And a lot of the no offense, but they promote degeneracy.
You don't have to say no offense.
And it's just I think that they promote degeneracy as an ideal. And I think that if you look at the right, we try to promote values like the nuclear family. We try to promote people who embody what it means to be a normal, everyday American. And I don't say normal in the sense that if you're different and you're not a straight white male, what they try to say, that doesn't, mean you. I mean people that try to push the boundary of normal, rational thought, like calling themselves they, them, and things like that. Yeah,
bro, you see a lot of communities online, gay, even trans people that are against this stuff, like pushing it on children. You have, what's it called? Gays against or gays for something.
Gays against groomers.
Yep, gays against groomers. Yeah, I was blanking on the name.
Yeah.
But like even that, you see like there's people that are technically part of the LGBTQ community but don't subscribe to the idea of pushing this horrible stuff on children.
No, definitely not. They actually were at America Fest this year.
Really?
And they've become very involved with the conservative movement. One of our officers in our Turning Point group loves them. But here's the only thing I will say. And this is me being more of a hardline conservative than some. I agree with their mission. However, I think the problem is there are some on the right that are willing to sell out their moral positions and try to co-opt groups like that to gain credibility with moderates.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think like for me, again, I have no problem with gay people. I disagree with gay marriage. And I think that we should be willing to collaborate with these groups on something like that, because I absolutely agree with their mission. However, I don't think that on the right, we should brand ourselves as the party of the LGBT.
That makes sense.
I think that's a line that we have to carefully toe, basically, because if not, we are going to lose the integrity of what it means to be a conservative. And this is something that I've debated a lot with my friends. Like, does conservative mean being fiscally conservative and being
socially liberal?
Yeah, in some ways, because honestly,
but that's libertarian,
right? And I think like a lot of people who are conservative would say to be conservative you have to be a Christian or you have to be religious in some way, because that is what most conservatives originally were.
I would even say just hold moral values,
right? And I think like now it's become like the qualifications of what it means to be a conservative have become less and less.
Well, the country has fallen further away from religion,
right? And I think that's where a lot of our problems stem from.
Yeah.
In all fairness.
You really could. You could, go all the way back and point it to that, a lack of religion in the country and just the world in general.
Yeah.
I think that's real.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I agree. And I would be curious. I'm going to see if I can find a statistic on this. The percentage of Christians in America over time.
I think there's the majority of the religion in our country. I remember hearing a stat, like 82% Catholic.
Yeah.
But like, who practices?
Right. Here it is.
That's the thing. They identify as one thing.
Let's see. Okay, so this was Pew Research 65% in 2020 identified as Christian.
I was off.
And this is, okay, so they were 75% in 2015. That is a 10% reduction in 5 years. So
what are the percentages like between 2015 and 2020 with like everything else?
So let me see.
Because Islam is growing.
This doesn't say that. This is just...
I don't say that as a bad or good thing. It's just a fact.
Yeah, I think... Okay, so this is saying 75% in 2015, 70.6 in 2014, 78 in 2012, and it fluctuated. But okay, this goes back to 1990, 85%. So 85% in 1990, and now in 2020 we're at 65%. 1990, we had a lot more cohesion in the country when it came to social issues, race relations. Now we have progressed according to the left, and what it's actually become is that we have devolved.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. We have become much more, we've had a lot more racial tension. We have a lot less moral fabric, I would say, in our society. And you know, what can you point to as the common denominator? It's the fact that we don't have a shared identity as a nation anymore.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I really think, I mean, you know, people might disagree with this if they're not religious, but, you know, the Bible is very clear about God and what his actions will be against nations that deny him. And I think that we are reaping what we've sown at this point.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how like everybody says, "Oh, you know, we're so divided."
Yeah.
And it's the news that's doing that. Is the one thing.
Yeah.
But like you just think back to the founders.
Yeah.
Bro, they formed their own country after getting taxed at 3% for tea. And I always go on tangents around my family because usually this is what happens. I start to go on a rant and get like a little bit angry because like, bro, inflation is so bad. We are getting taxed at a ridiculous amount of money just per year, whatever you want to quantify it at.
Yeah.
And like we're not doing anything. We're just laying down, bro. The government is supposed to be scared of us, but we're scared of the government. And it's just funny because we have all the weapons.
Yeah.
They have the drones. That's the only bad thing.
Yeah. No, I agree, and that's interesting that you make that point because I say that myself a lot. We were worried about 3% when we were, you know, being formed as a nation. Now that we are one, I think that I read a statistic that it's like 33% on average is what the person spends out of their income on taxes. That is insane.
It's theft.
That is theft. And it's the fact that that's what I mean, that we have lost our identity. Not even just our religious identity that was shared. We have lost the identity of what it means to be an American. And I think what it used to mean is standing up for your rights, having, you know, the backbone to fight back against true injustice. And I think what we've seen now is the true injustices get swept to the side.
Yeah.
And instead, people manufacture injustices to paint themselves as a victim. Because really, if you look at them, like you've said about people with their pronouns getting pissed on social media if they're misgendered, victimhood has become a currency in America. And it's, if you're the victim, then, you know, you gain credibility for some reason.
Outrage too.
Yes. And it's, you know, that has contributed immensely to our lack of focus on what our actual problems are nowadays. You know, I
just wonder how long it's going to be until like people are fed up with being taxed, because we could change it at any point in time. It's just a little barbaric way to get there. That's the only bad thing.
Yeah.
It's going to happen eventually. The poor people are going to eat the rich people, but it's...
Yeah.
I hope I'm not alive for it, but I have a feeling I will be.
Yeah.
I won't be doing any of the eating, though. I'll just be sitting back.
Spectator, yeah.
It's scary to think about.
Yeah. No, I mean, I honestly, as much as I would like to think that, you know, the people eventually stand up against taxation, I don't know if it's going to happen. I just really think that, like, if we're so worried about, you know, if somebody can't go a day without worrying about somebody calling him he or she, then...
We're far gone.
That ship has sailed. And I think that we have gotten to a point where the people that need to be standing up have become not only complacent, but it's like they've become an advocate for the government. It's weird. I never thought that I would see the day where people advocate against their own rights. But COVID, during that opened my eyes to how stupid people are.
It's fear, bro.
It is.
That's all it is. They just control you through fear. I remember the anticipation of COVID.
Yeah.
It started out, somebody got in Cuyahoga County.
Yep.
And then it was like, oh, it's in Warren.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shit.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was scared. I was at the YMCA the day before they closed it with a couple friends. Nobody else was there.
Yeah.
They closed it down the next day.
Yep.
Everyone's like, oh, shit, like this disease is going to kill everybody. And it kills like a small fraction of 1%, maybe 1% of people.
Yeah.
However many people in the country killed.
Yeah.
But makes you wonder, man, if there was something that came around like a disease X that killed like 10, 15% of people, what will we let the government impose on us, you know?
Yeah. And just seeing like how willing people were to go along with that. And that's,
Very willing.
It's not even just that they were, that's the real scary part is complacency is one thing. Complacency from fear is even one thing, but not that it's good. What is bad is when you have the same people that are not only complacent, but they're advocating actively against themselves. Mm-hmm. That is what's shocking. Like, it's one thing to personally, do what you feel you need to do to keep yourself safe, like people wearing masks. If that is your placebo, then by all means take it. But I think, the problem was these people were basically the government's lapdog, like fighting with amongst themselves of who's not wearing a mask and who's not doing this, who's not doing that. That is why I think that we'll never see anything of substance as far as social change with taxes or with any other thing really, that would actually make the pendulum swing back to where it should be,
It's just like, how did these people survive,
I wonder that.
Like, how? I don't understand. It just doesn't make sense. I'm not advocating for death. It's a joke. But, like, how did these people survive COVID?
I don't know.
They're still here with us.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Just be normal again. You don't have to wear a mask when you're driving alone in your Prius.
I see people still with masks on. I was in traffic, and I looked over, and there was somebody sitting in a car next to me alone, and they had a mask on. It's 3 years after the fact.
I was in church. Somebody was a Eucharistic minister wearing a COVID mask. What are you doing?
It's insane, and this is one. People might think I have a lot of strong political opinions, and I do. This is one that I am extremely, on.
I'm here for it.
If you are still wearing a mask right now, unless you have a legitimate like cancer, right, or something like that has compromised your immune system beyond reason, and you're still wearing a mask, it is the most insane thing that I've ever seen in my life.
It is quite unintelligent.
Yeah, it is just. It's a mental illness at this point. If you're still wearing something out of fear, then you're beyond reason.
Unless you have blue hair. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
That's part of the outfit, I guess.
Yeah. Which is a crazy outfit. Mm-hmm. Crazy.
Listen, I'm all about fashion, but...
Demi Lovato, what are you doing?
Did you see Sam Smith? Like some of the stuff that he's worn in the last couple of years.
All day about Sam Smith.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sam Smith is a gay man, yes. And I'm completely comfortable in my sexuality, so I can say this. Mm-hmm. He was a pretty good-looking guy in 2017.
Yeah, he was a normal-looking.
Holy shit, skinny.
Yeah,
borderline anorexic, I would say. Looked good. Once again, I'm a hetero. Right? Let me express that. I'm a hetero. Looking good though. Because he had a little bit of milk fat in like 2014. Then he had this little glow up, and he just stopped eating, I guess, in 2017. Looking good. The beard was on point. Like, he was looking good. Maybe I'm a little gay. Anyway, the point is, 2019 comes, and now he's getting a little chunky again. But still, looks like a regular person.
Yeah.
2022 comes around, and he's just gave up, apparently. He's wearing like these like jean shorts like cut off a couple inches below his waist.
Yep.
He's wearing like crop tops, and it's just
Did you see the balloon costume that he wore?
No.
He wore something where he looked like a heart. Like, it was like a big blow up like heart. Let me see if I can find a picture of it.
And then he dressed up as the devil, and it's like, listen, only the skinny people can pull that off. You can't be fat doing that. Let's see. Oh Lord, no, no, no.
Yeah.
And then so he came out as gay, or he came onto the scene as gay. Um and then that wasn't enough. So then he was genderqueer.
They, them.
Well, no, it was they, them, and then genderqueer, and just be a man.
Yeah.
You know, or just say you're trans. That's good enough for me. I don't even care. But like, what are we doing?
It's that's what I mean about the slippery slope. You know, it's when you make when they make these identities or their sexuality their identity, then they have to continue to stay relevant. They have to continue to gain more and more down the slope.
But that's
basically
not even sexuality anymore.
No,
what he's doing.
No, that's the point. They have to find something
genderqueer.
new. Yeah, it's made up. I just don't understand it. And that's the interesting thing they say about sexuality. They are the ones themselves that said that sex and gender are different. So why do we talk about the two in the same context? That is what really blows me away, is because they say, okay, your sexuality is one thing, and some people are willing to admit you have a biological sex, but then they have made this new concept of gender. What is the reason of having that then? Just so that you can feel better about yourself, or so that you feel that you're entitled to different treatment? It's narcissism is what it is.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Ugh. Do we ever escape all this and become a normal civilization again, or are we just too far gone?
I don't know. Part of me wants to think yes. I will say this. After the whole Claudine Gay fallout and the UPenn incident and everything with the anti-Semitism, like obviously my journalism focuses on higher education.
Right.
I am starting to see a shift back to the right in
Really?
some ways. Yes, not completely, but I think that if we are over here on the left, then we're starting to come a little bit more towards at least the center.
That's good.
Yeah.
What is a little bit scary though is if it goes all the way to the right, and then you have like a Hitler. I know. I realize that like fascism is like a European right wing term. It's not really an American right wing term.
Yeah.
But still, fascism is what tends to come if you're all the way to the right. And I don't think we've gone all the way to the left either. Communism still isn't. I mean, there's like socialistic programs, but communism still isn't like the de facto thing in the United States.
Right.
But it's about being somewhere in the middle.
I think that honestly, right now, some of the people that we're seeing on the left and in higher education, not to say that they're fascist, but they embody fascism in some ways.
They definitely have fascist tendencies, no doubt.
And it's funny because they are the ones like Antifa. Okay, they say about how they want to oppose fascism. They are themselves
anti-fascists.
Yeah, they are exactly what they accuse other people of. Like here's the definition of fascism. This is according to Wikipedia at least, but a far right, authoritarian, ultra nationalist political ideology and movement. Okay, that's one part of it.
Right.
Authoritarian though, there. Okay. Characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition. We see that. Belief in a natural social hierarchy and other things. So I think that what we've seen is exactly that in some ways. At a school, what is it? That there is, we have the administration, which pushes these policies, and then the leftist people who the administration bow down to, and that everyone who is not part of that is subordinated. And I think the forcible suppression of opposition is a big part of it. I just think that it's interesting that the same people who want to accuse other people of this are themselves guilty. Okay, and militarism. What do we see with these riots? You don't see conservatives breaking down the door at Target to go loot it. It's just interesting. And also, like, the whole January 6th incident, okay? Now, looking at this completely unbiased, okay? Yes, I understand the outrage over that, but looking at it simply from a standard of fairness, right? Not even analyzing what happened there. But if you look at that and say that that's wrong, then there is no reasonable, logical way that you can say that what happened during the BLM Summer of Love was right. It's the same thing, except worse.
And we have all the footage.
Yeah.
They just let them in,
Yeah.
showing them around, unlocking doors like it's there.
Yep.
That's why Tucker got fired from Fox.
Yeah. That's true. And also, I think it was Vivek that was really starting to push the narrative with that, about how we need to, have an honest conversation about what happened on January 6th.
And also, too, why is nobody talking about the FBI's involvement?
Mm-hmm. Very true. The FBI has been compromised beyond belief, I think.
I mean, but they've been escalating things for a long time.
Oh, yeah, along with the CIA. But I think that what's happening is now it's starting to come to public light a lot more.
Because of the internet.
Yeah, and I think that is I also think that it's weird. They've become more emboldened to do more and more, even though the accountability of the internet exists now and it didn't before.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting. It's like they've become more emboldened despite the fact that it would be easier for them to be exposed.
Yeah.
Which I can't really answer that question as to why that would be.
It's weird, though.
But yeah, that's one thing I've noticed for sure.
One last question here, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Neuralink?
I think that in certain cases, it could be a good technology because I have heard, I don't know much about the technology behind it, but I've heard that it could be used to help certain neurological conditions, which, okay, that's fair. But I am a skeptic with most technology and with anything like that. So my first thought is that's going to be exploited. And I think that, that could easily become a thing where the government is forcing people to get it. So I am again, a Christian. I look at things through the view of the end times, right? And what does the Bible talk about? The mark of the beast and things like that. That would be a great thing for them to use eventually to signify that, yeah. I think. And I'm leery of, aside from the theological aspect of it, I am just leery of giving the government or any company control over my mind. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That just does not sound like a reasonable thing. And honestly, I don't know. That just sounds like the beginning to any crazy sci-fi movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very scary thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're familiar with the story of the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
They were trying to become like God.
Yeah.
And
yep.
God said no, and as a result, they were broken up into different languages, and communication amongst everybody was broken.
That's true.
I feel like something will happen if we get to a point where we're too close to God in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
Something will happen, and he'll...
Could be.
Yeah.
Well, I think, like I said, I think that what we're starting to see in society with all of the way that things have devolved, I think that anybody, regardless of where they're at on the political spectrum, because people on the left have different gripes, right. They're not satisfied, I don't think, even though a lot of what they do controls the narrative. I don't think they're 100% satisfied with what goes on.
Yeah.
Even when they're winning on an issue. I think that, we could all agree that our country is not where we want it to be.
Yeah, 100%.
So I don't know. I just think with things like that could easily be, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to ramble too much, but I really think that is just a disaster waiting to happen. Yeah. Honestly.
Let's hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Austin Browne, it's been a hell of an episode. Thank you so much for coming on. I love having conversations with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And yeah, man, I look forward to seeing what you're going to do next.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, man. All right, everybody. We'll see ya.